Big deals. That's what we're going to be talking to you about today. How do you start them? How are they different? How do you get your manager bought into them? Why should you do them versus the transactional deals? I love big deals. That's where you pretty much make your big money in B2B sales. That's the value that we add in big sales, getting into new accounts, making deals bigger and faster than they would be otherwise. It's an art form. It's part science. It takes lots of practice, takes confidence, takes determination, because the nature is that our customers will buy as little and as slowly as possible and give us as little money and value in exchange for what we bring to them. What we have to do is convince them about why doing the bigger deal makes sense, doing it all at once versus piecemeal over years and years. And we're going to dig all into this today. Before we do, I want to make sure you're checking out Co-Video. Video email is the icebreaker of today. It is really what's getting people through getting into new accounts. It's super helpful. Co-Video is the product to use. It's got a Chrome plugin, super easy to use, and it's a great way to connect up with the clients that you want to get into, because big deals start with small conversations. And at the end, I'll sum this up for you. Let's get into the interview. Hey, Jamal, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, tell us about yourself.
Hey, Brian, thanks for having me. Well, I guess you could say I'm a career enterprise sales guy. I've been at it for about 18 years. I've been selling stuff since I was in college. And I guess I grew up with it and got into enterprise sales and kind of worked my way through the ranks and became fairly good at it. And I think if I was ever going to say if there was anything I did in the enterprise sales world, it would be doing really large deals. And that's what I do. It's all I think about. And thinking in the shower and eating breakfast. And I just think, okay, how can I get another large deal?
Now, those smaller deals are so much easier. Why do you overlook them?
Well, it's funny because even when I go for, I don't get every big deal I go for, and some of those turn into small deals. Yeah. And that's how you make a number. And it's not the small deals that I don't like, but I guess after such a long time, I've kind of figured out that I don't really like traditional selling. I don't like making 100 calls a day. I don't like
but that's the key to success, isn't it?
Yeah, right, exactly. That's what we're taught.
Yeah,
it's a whole, it's a whole world of training out there and belief about everything is about numbers, and there's some truth to it when you're kind of in the gut of the bell curve. But if you're really trying to get somewhere more significant or larger or maybe more impactful, I found that the rules seem to be a little bit different. So it's more fun there.
Now, there's a lot of issues with big deals, both in doing them and managing your manager while you do them. And I always used to see that reps would have what I called the white elephant strategy, where their head would be on the chopping block, but they had this white elephant out there that if you only gave them 9 more months, they would close this multi-7-figure deal. Why don't we start by defining what's a big deal in your world?
Well, that's a great question, and I got to say it's going to be different in everybody's world, and it's not always been what it is now for me. It wasn't always that. So coming up. A big deal for me when I started selling books door to door, and a big deal for me was selling like $300 worth of books. And then when I got into enterprise sales, when I started, a big deal for me was $1 million. But now a big deal for me is over $50 million.
Wow. Now contrast that to your quota.
That's another.
My quota is $70 million.
When I first started, so I've been working with the same company in the same business unit for a long time.
Yeah.
And when I started doing this, the first one that I did, I had a fairly small quota and got a really large deal in the denominations that I had just mentioned.
Yeah.
And so I was many, many times over. But I've done 3 in the past 7 years. And the second one, the management team kind of caught on to what I was doing and kind of placed their bets that it would actually go through. And so they really raised the quota.
Yeah.
And in the third one, they even did it more. So even though I did what is it, mid eight figure deal, my quota was high seven figures.
Yeah. And that's kind of in the stratosphere for most people. I mean, you work for a big company, so it's possible, clearly possible. It's a huge company. And I've been in software. Is that true? Obviously.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And so you're selling to big companies.
That's right.
Yeah. And give us a sense of how long those deals take.
They've really varied. The first one was the shortest one, and it was the Bluebird. It was the one that I learned how to do this, and I take almost zero credit for it because that was kind of that was where I was mentored.
Yeah.
And that one took 9 months, and the way that it came together, it was in an account that had kind of a rolling contract, like a 3-year renewal that took place. And it was up for a renewal, but it was at a much lower level financially. And so many things changed in that negotiation that it just shot up to be, 4 or 5 times what it was in the previous contract. And so you asked me how long does it take to do something like that. The first time it was about 6 months. The rest of them can be years.
Yeah. Well, let's take something that's kind of that wasn't started already, that you kind of initiated, and instead of taking down, a couple $100K, you built it into several million. How did you do that?
Well, there's stages, and if there's not an obvious pain or opportunity that the customer's already identified, then it's a bit of a longer haul most of the time. And what that starts with, at least in my mind, it really starts with visioning. It's like, okay, there's a big deal in here somewhere. Big deals happen. Why can't it be mine?
There's a pony in here somewhere.
There's a pony in here somewhere, right? And so I start by just saying, okay, if there was going to be a big deal, what would it be in this account? Why would they do it? How would it help them? How would it help them more than a small deal would help them? And I start to just think through it and then work backwards. It's like, okay, if I wanted a deal of this impact or this importance or this level or this deal size, what would it look like? Why? What would have to happen? Who'd have to be in on it? Whose blessing would we have to have? And then you just work backwards. And that's where I start. Okay. And then you start working from relationships and work your way up.
Do you look for a champion or do you become the champion?
That's another great question. So I think I should only speak for myself, but I think it's a fairly common attitude that most of us salespeople think, what can I do? I'm just a salesperson.
Yeah.
I'm going to take what is kind of obvious in front of me because that's either what I can do or that's what I deserve. But one thing that I've learned is how to find leverage. And one of the biggest places that I find leverage is in my own executives. They've got the title, they've got the experience, they got the gray hair, they got the Rolodex. And if I can get my executive to come along and I say, hey, Mrs. Executive, I smell smoke over in this account. Let's go make a fire.
Yeah.
And you can attract them into that pursuit. Things go faster and they get higher very, very quickly.
So you become the champion. That's what I heard. I think you almost have to in that case.
So I believe that leadership can happen at any level.
Yeah.
And if I do anything, I might show leadership a vision and then bring people who might have more gunpowder than I do. So if that's being a champion, then I got to be the champion.
Well, I mean, usually in most deals, certainly in the bigger deals, there's somebody within the account that gets this huge personal win by doing this deal. That this transformation, this automation of something is going to have a huge impact on both the business, but also their career. And that person becomes the catalyst for it. They may not know how to get it done within the account. And then you kind of get this partner in crime rapport going with them where, I mean, you know how a big company makes a purchase decision, but you don't maybe have the rapport and the relationships and the trust through that whole decision chain. And they have more of that because they work there.
Absolutely. I mean, those partnerships have definitely come about in the deals that I've done, and as you said, they have a lot to gain. And in one case, somebody who I've been working with has been promoted. They used to be a director, now they're a VP, and you can tie a lot of that back to the work that we've done together.
And how complicated, I mean, do you sell the whole portfolio or do you sell a particular product?
No, that's sometimes a luxury of working in a really large company. There is a big bag. You carry a big bag with a lot of products in it. So I do carry, I have a portfolio. It's not everything that my company sells. That's thousands of products, but I've got about 6 or 7 major products.
Okay.
And sometimes it's a sale of one and sometimes it's a bundle. And
I assume you guys are pretty much, because all the big three are all organized pretty identically in a matrix where there's named account managers and then there's business unit managers. Where do you fit in? What is that accurate or is that different there?
Yeah, within my organization?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like that. There are layers and layers of management.
No, I got into one of those big three through an acquisition. So I was used to being a cowboy all on my own. And then all of a sudden I had to work within the matrix. And, certainly your company was a little bit more modern. Ours was, that the account manager knew everybody in procurement and that was it. And those people are great if you already got the decision made. How did you find working within that complexity?
So it's kind of Game of Thrones. The whole world is made up of a number of smaller kingdoms.
Yeah.
Each one of them have their own set of rules or cultures, and you got to learn how to navigate all of it if you're ever going to make your way up to the big Iron Throne. And so it's definitely a journey, and it can be overwhelming, and it certainly was overwhelming in the beginning. But one of the biggest lessons that I learned from working in a really big company with really big customers is that the larger you get more and more rule-based, right? There's just more rules. You got to have them to maintain order. But when there are so many rules, it becomes relatively ineffective if you follow every rule
if you obey
to the T.
All. Yeah.
So if you're ever going to get anywhere, you have to learn either how to bend the rules or to get exceptions. And once you learn how to do that, everything just kind of changes. It's kind of like at first you're kind of running around in a maze, like a mouse in a maze. But then as soon as you learn how to either bend or get exceptions to rules, it's like you elevate above the maze. You can look around and float, and it's like, holy cow, it's a whole new world. I have all this freedom and flexibility to do stuff. That was the biggest thing I learned from big organizations.
And so take us through your strategy, because most people in these portfolio companies, I had like a 3-year earn out in one. You basically, you try and find where you have the best fit, where you have leverage, and try and work the system.
Yeah. So, sorry, you want to finish?
Well, what is your strategy? I guess because there's a lot of reps listening that don't work for a portfolio company that are trying to do big deals. What does the big deal hunter do differently than the transactional guy?
I love analogies. I'm already using them a lot, even on this episode. But it's kind of like the difference between fishing and whale hunting.
Yeah.
If you're going to go fishing, you're going to take a fishing rod, and it's a light thing. You can carry it to work and go on your lunch hour if you're close to a river or the coast. But if you're going to go whale hunting, a fishing rod just doesn't work. You know, you need big boats and equipment and lots of people, and it's just different. And so, guys who are trying to get to their first big deal, who talk to me, you know, they say, "How do you do it?" And I say, "Well, you got to throw away your fishing rod. Just throw it away. You gotta stop talking to the lowest, most accessible person within your customer, hoping to latch on just to show activity within the account. You gotta completely stop that, and you gotta start from as high a place as possible. And by doing so, you prevent a bunch of people from blocking your way in getting up there. If you just start as close to the top, or you don't want to you don't want to overreach and become irrelevant because you're too far in the ethers. But the higher you start from the beginning, everything else gets easier. Because if you get kicked down from somebody higher, you come with kind of borrowed authority, right? That senior person said, "Oh, this is not bad. It's a good idea. Go talk to this person." And when you're referred internally by an executive to a mid-level person, then they got to do something with you. So that's the first part. I think the first part of the strategy is throw away your fishing rod and start thinking about how to hunt whales.
And when you're hunting whales, you're talking to higher level people. What do you talk about? I mean, you could talk about the product, you could talk about the problem, you could talk about the opportunity, you could talk about their personal wins.
It reminds me of a conversation I had with somebody else who was the person that got me thinking about big deals in the first place. Her name's Marcy Akers. And she was a veteran even when I was started at the company I work at now. And where everybody else is doing $1 and $2 million a year, she was doing 10 and 14, like back-to-back years. And I was just thinking, how do you do? What's the pixie dust that you sprinkle on your customers to make them just throw money at you? And I caught up with her not too long ago, and one of the things she said was, "I never use the word software when I'm talking to my customers.
Yeah.
And if I ever refer to it, I just call it the asset. And I'm always just talking about what you can do with this asset, what it will get you or what it will help you avoid, and put it in big, big terms and just paste it to the most important numbers that company cares about."
And that gets them interested.
Yeah.
But, when it takes 9 months to a year and a half to get the transaction done, how do you keep the momentum going?
So in the ideal situation, you get your executive and you match them up with a customer executive, and they have a conversation, whether you're there or not. And that conversation, you prepare and you coach your own executive to say, "Look, here's what I want to achieve, and this is the kind of value we think that we can bring." Invite them to go check it out. And by checking it out, it turns into a mini project, like an analysis. So it starts with the executive. You pique their interest, and if they're interested enough, they'll put some resources on it. And then it becomes an investigation or a mini project. And the momentum is continued because you ask your executive up front to say, "Hey, let's have a look at this. Let's see if it would work for your company." And by the end, you and I will meet again. And either, we'll work together or we'll just part friends, but it would have been a really good effort to look at something that might, move your company forward. And so you have an endpoint that brings the executives back together at the end to give you a good shot at closing.
And I got to assume that you have an ocean of competitors or alternatives at least.
Yeah.
How do you keep them at bay? Because they probably have to look at other things, right, just to justify such a large purchase.
Yeah. I think I look at it in two different ways. Either you can go for a complete black and white scenario. You paint a black and white scenario, and it's kind of like you're a vehicle, right? And so you want to throw rocks at their vehicle, and you want to promote your vehicle in the eyes of the customer. But I don't really use you don't really ever use the names of the competitors, but you can describe them in a way that they know who you're talking about. The other one is more of a near miss strategy, which is when you're in the soup with the competitors. it's a competitive situation. You know they're there, and you message in a way that the difference between you might be a little bit small, but the way that you characterize the competition and run your investigation to the level of value, it's so unique to you that it's kind of like, okay, they can both do fairly the same thing, but that other one is just a little bit off, right? If it was a bullet, it would have just missed me.
Yeah.
And that's the two basic approaches that I usually take. Either we're super, super, super different and it's plain as day and it's black and white, us and the competition, or we're really kind of close, but there's just something off about that competitor, and then you blow that up in their minds.
And is it typically functionality, or is it company value? Is it geography? Is it service, or whatever works?
How to make the differences plain?
Yeah.
No, it's usually, it's never really features or functions, at least not where I've been successful. It's always been why it just isn't right for the company.
Okay.
The whole package, right? It's just off, and either it's off because it's not a good fit for the rest of the ecosystem within the company, right? From a technical perspective, it's not going to fit in well, or culturally, the two companies are so different. We're a better match than they are. It's always something bigger than just features and functions.
And how do you prevent what I've seen so much throughout my career is that they try and do the smallest possible thing to mitigate risk, as opposed
to start?
Yeah, instead of doing the $50 million deal, they want to do the $50K deal. And, we'll do the 50 million one next year after you get quota for it.
Yeah, exactly. So I try to limit the options I try to make two options look good. Do the big deal right now, or do a very small pilot that'll only last 3 months, and then it becomes the big deal, all within the same fiscal.
Yeah. Because there are budgets, right? And this is what, when I was at a portfolio company, we all ran into it. It was all getting, the annual budget and trying to get your part of that budget. And you knew when theirs was, and they knew when yours was, and it was at least a 3-month process to get on that list.
Yeah, I mean, I don't do big deals every year.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just takes those couple of years. Now, you said something earlier, Brian, that is really true. Your management team might give you a little bit of leash, 9 months or 15 months or something like that. But if you don't start producing at some point, it's usually not great for you. I happen to be fortunate enough to have done one big deal and then have been given enough leash to go get the next one. The next one took 3 years. I had a couple of okay years between them.
Yeah.
One of them I didn't make my number. The other one I barely got there. And then the third year was another really big year. But I was fortunate enough to have a management team that would give me enough, rope to run to do that.
Yeah, because that's a lot of rope, and that's certainly in today's market not that common. Because they view, the big whale hunters as, they're blowing smoke until you get the PO.
Yep.
And you're like, and it's not a very comfortable feeling to be the rep because the commission checks are goose eggs for quite a while.
Well, as I said earlier, it's not, at least in my experience, it hadn't been a goose egg, because I'll shoot for a big deal and either it gets delayed or it gets turned into a smaller deal.
Yeah.
So you can still easily, and it's not like it's not like the only thing that I will touch is a big deal. There are smaller opportunities that simply come up, but in terms of the overall goal, you always got to be pushing the big rock forward, even if you're harvesting the smaller opportunities along the way. If the only thing that you did was work on this one deal and you lived and died by it, it's not a great strategy. But as a primary driver within 3 or 4 opportunities that you're working on in a given year, I think that's sustainable.
Yeah, because early in my career, I sat down with my manager, and he's he was telling me, or I was asking him what his secret was. And he goes, well, there's Fred over in San Jose. And what Fred does, he does one deal a quarter. And it's usually a big deal, comes in the last day of the quarter, and sometimes it doesn't. And then there's this guy in Chicago, he'll do anything, the fishing rod guy. And he might make his number. He works 80 hours a week. And he goes, my secret is I do a little bit of both. Mm-hmm. And that stuck with me my whole career. I had done some big deals, and it depends, but I did mostly startups. And in startups, you really can't do just big deals. The company starves. Not only you starve, but the company does. And, and you have a third of the country, so it's just not possible to concentrate so much of your time on it. Now, looking at your career moving forward, is this what you'd solely like to do? Because there are, major account managers or certain roles within the company that would allow for that.
And I've had roles like that. So I've been what was called a key account director, which is basically it's like an Uber rep on top of other reps. And the other reps don't report to you, but you set the strategy, and they generally go along with, the overall strategy that you set in conjunction with the customer executive. So I've had roles like that, and they're great roles. And as you move along the career path of an individual contributor salesperson, that's a wonderful. If you ever get the shot to have an experience like that, it's a real eye opener. It's kind of like being an executive individual contributor.
And I like this because I have clients that sell like private jets, and they might sell one jet a year, and but I think that certainly in the technology space, there's a lot more fluidity to it. With them, it's much more of a political sell, a finance sell, a security and lifestyle sell. So there's no problem getting people interested. The
right.
problem is how do you work it to justify it within the company? In technology, you have to a little bit more flexibility. What about it turns you on other than the big commission checks?
Impact.
Yeah.
No question. It's impact. So what I've seen happen through doing a few large deals is that when a customer does a really large deal, it tends to be for something that's mission critical, either to avoid something really bad happening or to make something really good possible and likely. And what I've seen happen through the work that I've done with my team and with our customers is we've been able to impact the lives of millions of people because of what our customers do. Their end users or their end customers or their end patients, we've seen the impact on them from the work that we've done. And it's an incredible feeling to say, the deal that we did turned into an operating model on some technology.
Yeah.
And it changed the way that the company worked, and it helped them do something good faster or have a greater reach or have a deeper impact in the lives of everyday people. And that's a feeling that you'll never get from a massive commission check.
I can see that. And how do you get them to be able to justify this internally?
I do some coaching, and one of the guys who I coach is working at a startup, and his company has a value proposition that is kind of a 10-to-1, right? Do it the old way and it'll cost you $10 million. Do it this new way with our widget or our technology, and it'll cost you 1/10 of that cost.
Yeah.
But their deals are only like, $100K or less. And it's just the same argument on a larger scale. There are several arguments you can use, but in principle, in concept, the same kind of things that lead to the transactional deals can lead to the very, very large deals. So the justification goes back to just what I mentioned earlier. Either you avoid something that's really, really bad or stops the bleeding, or it enables something that they need either to stay in business or to get a higher revenue, greater margin, or wider reach.
Cool. This has been a fun conversation. Where can people go to connect with you and learn more about your work?
You're welcome to hit me up on LinkedIn, Jamal Reimer, Jamal Reimer, Reimer. And I've also recently started a LinkedIn group that's just for enterprise salespeople. It's called the Sales Tribe. And either you can just search for it in LinkedIn groups, or you can just hit me up and I'd be happy to let you in if you're in enterprise sales.
I think all of us have to learn how to do big deals, because the A players, the real jobs that we're going to find in B2B sales, are for people that can do one of two things: get into new accounts or do big deals. Everything else, can be automated. It's really service, account management. All of that doesn't take as much talent. It takes a nice, hardworking person. What takes talent is getting into new accounts and closing big, complex deals. That's the two things that I focus on in the courses. One, start the conversation, get the meeting, get you into new accounts without cold emailing, without cold calling, using a scientifically proven way of engaging with people that can be systematized so that it scales, so that you can outsource it, so that you can automate it with technology, but make it not feel like it's been automated with technology. Technology is great, but it tends to enable us to do dumb things faster. What I want to do is smart things faster, to get you into the accounts that you want to get into, to start the conversations, to get away from the old pitching that everyone's been teaching you about that doesn't seem to work very well anymore. So let's get started. Go to b2brevenue.com, click on the training. I'm holding the Q1 prices till the end of March. So you can get in, you can do a one-time payment or a 12-month payment plan, up to you. I've got a sample email in the show notes that you can send to your manager to get them to pay for it, but you're better off paying for it for yourself. Why? Because then you'll be committed to doing it. You'll be committed to investing in yourself. Because it's not just an online course. There's community with office hours twice a month for an hour each, and you get unlimited sales coaching that's recorded and put into the course. We get on Zoom. We go through your deals. We apply the course to those deals on how to make those deals bigger, faster, and to crush your number. Because that's all that matters, right? That's why we're here. We're not here just to hear my funny voice. We're here to learn about selling and how to make good money, how to build your career, how to get out of the crappy situation you might be in and get into a great situation, to be the one that the headhunters are calling, that you're fighting off people. Everybody wants to hire me. That's it. Hey, make sure you check out the other podcasts, Sales Questions, B2B Revenue. They're all there. Great ideas to help you. I answer your questions. Connect up with me on LinkedIn. If you see my content flying by on LinkedIn, please give it a thumbs up. Give it a share. Maybe put a little comment. Let me know what you think. Tell me you're a podcast listener. Love to hear from you. Also, you just can follow me on LinkedIn to make sure you get those daily videos. And I've also put them up on my YouTube channel, Brian Burns Sales on YouTube, all individual words. To see the show notes, just page up or tap the artwork on your smartphone, depending on which one you have. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.